on the Premier Radio Network.
I have no idea how all these years I have missed the Mothman. You know, people have called and referenced the Mothman on my program before, but I never knew a thing about it. Never. Certainly never the original story. Nothing about it at all. And here we have the world's expert on Mothman about to be on the air, John A. Keel, arguably the world's foremost researcher into the paranormal. All about Mothman coming right up. And then it's got a solar panel on top. It's got internal rechargeable batteries to store any excess energy you or the sun might produce. And it's got this extendable LED light that's got a magnetic tip on the back. So you get light and you get radio for 35 minutes every time you turn that crank. It should be in every single American household. Just $99.95 now. Get one before they're gone, I'm telling you. The number is 1-800-522-8863. 1-800-522-8863. They're on the web, of course, at ccradio.com. John A. Keel, arguably the world's foremost researcher into the paranormal, has traveled extensively to over 40 countries, investigating the unknown for almost 50 years. His voracious curiosity manifested early. He read everything, particularly science, travel, humor, and magic. When 12, he had one of his first brushes with the paranormal, an attic poltergeist that responded to his knocking. We'll ask about that. By the time he was 14, he was renting space, writing a column with Perry Herald, publishing the school paper, and contributing to magazines. Oh my, at 16, he was publishing a science fiction magazine. Fanzine, actually. The Lunarite, I believe it is. And sold a piece to the New Yorker. Wow. In the 1950s, he worked for the Department of the Army as Chief of Continuity and Production for the American Forces Network, AFN in Frankfurt. That's Germany. In 1952, wrote and produced the radio program Things in the Sky about unidentified flying objects that was heard by millions throughout Europe. Author now of 30 books since Jadu, I guess, his 1957 autobiography. Keel's groundbreaking books have been published in over 20 countries and include many of ufology's most acclaimed titles: Operation Trojan Horse, Our Haunted Planet, and the Mothman Prophecies. Incredible Mothman investigations are the subject of a major motion picture starring a Keel-inspired character played by Richard Gere, all slated to be released on January 25th. That, in most time zones, would be today. Keel has written articles that have appeared in many leading periodicals, including Playboy, Saga, Fate. His monthly Beyond the Known column is a popular Fate feature. John was recently the subject of Secrets of the Shadow World. Oh my, what a title. A feature-length documentary acclaimed by acclaimed director George Cukor, who premiered at Lincoln Center in New York City. His extensive television appearances include Johnny Carson, Jack Parr, Hugh Downs, David Letterman. Wow. This guy's been around. John, hi, welcome to the program.
Yeah, I've been up to no good for many, many years, sir.
And how have we never before this moment connected?
I don't know. I've listened to you for a very long time. But somehow never happened before.
It's just illogical.
I know many of the people who have been on your show. Yeah, it's illogical that we haven't connected before.
Lauren Coleman got through, actually, just before you were to come on the air here. That wasn't a planned thing. He just got through. And I admitted to him, and I'm going to admit the same thing to you. All of these years that I've done the paranormal and things about the paranormal, I've traveled a lot of different paths, but the only thing I've known about Mothman was an occasional caller who would reference Mothman. And I'd always say, well, I don't know a lot about it. And your name would come up. And so anyway, here we are finally. What is Mothman?
Well, it all began about 35 years ago. So that's, in terms of generations, that's like 3 generations by modern standards, you know. Easy to forget it. Mothman appeared in West Virginia in 1966. And there were frequent appearances of this creature, which was described as being about 7 or 8 feet tall. Pretty big. And had very bright red eyes, and it would spread wings that were about 10 feet across, and it would take off straight up in the air, and it had a curious habit of chasing automobiles.
Straight up in the air. Now it didn't...
Like a helicopter, right. It didn't, you know, most of birds have to do a running start.
Yeah, sure. Superman leap.
Yeah, and anyone who saw this was usually horrified and terrified and traumatized by it. And I, over a period of a year, I collected over 100 reports from people who seemed very sincere and very, very frightened by what had happened to them. This thing had sort of hypnotic powers that people would be transfixed when they saw it. And then the year climaxed with the collapse of a bridge with a lot of people on it.
What did that have to do with Mothman?
Well, it seemed to bring things to not to a stop, but everything slowed down. There were a lot of people on the bridge who had either encountered the Mothman or had close relatives who had encountered the Mothman.
This was geographically held to how small an area?
To the Ohio Valley. The Ohio River, you know, is the border between Ohio and West Virginia.
Right.
And a little town called Point Pleasant was right there where the bridge was. And it was a town of about 6,000 people. And
so the sightings were confined to this town or to an area around the town, or what?
To a large part of West Virginia.
Oh.
And there were sightings in Ohio, too. And there were curious sightings of what really looked like a really large bird like, say, an ancient pterodactyl or something.
Phone face.
So,
Prox mine.
meanwhile, the people in this town and all around it were having all kinds of paranormal
Pop light.
manifestations, poltergeist activity. And that I happened to be there almost by accident. And I had gone to Beckley, West Virginia, which is sort of a mining town then. I don't know what it is now.
What had taken you there? Why were you going there?
Because there was a boy there who had found a cat with wings.
A cat with wings?
Yes. And this cat was he named it Thomas, and it became a celebrity. And he charged 10 cents to look at this cat. So all of the people in the area were paying 10 cents to take a look at this winged cat.
Well, I'd sure pay 10 cents.
Yeah. Well, I went there. I did a story for a magazine. I think it was a magazine called Coronet. You probably don't remember that.
I do remember that.
There were many general magazines at that time. Now there are very few general magazines. They're all specialized. But I was a freelance writer writing for all of these magazines. And I went there to track down the whole story. Thomas the winged cat, and his wings fell off.
They fell off?
Yeah, they were like lumps of gristle or something.
So they...
And that ruined the kid's business.
Yeah, I'm sure that was the end of the 10 cents.
There was a lot more to the story. A woman in the neighborhood claimed that Thomas was her cat. And then when the wings fell off, she lost interest in it. She took the boy to court before the wings fell off.
The court case died on the vine.
So there was quite a story. And while I was in Beckley, I was having lunch with the editor of the newspaper in Beckley.
Right.
And the story came over the wire that 4 young people had seen this tall winged creature in Point Pleasant, outside of Point Pleasant, in an area that was known as the TNT area.
Before we even get any farther, can I ask you, how does one get a job doing what you did? Being able to say, listen, editor, I'm on a plane for this winged cat. How do you get a job where you get to do those kind of stories?
I collected many other stories on each of these trips. And Playboy magazine had asked me to get to the bottom of the flying saucer mystery. At that time, there were flying saucer stories from all over the world, not just from Michigan or, localized stories. People were seeing them everywhere, and they were seeing them in the Ohio Valley.
Well, gee whiz, John, they're still seeing them in the Ohio Valley.
Yes.
And we still don't know what they are, so I take it you disappointed Mr. Hefner and couldn't get to the bottom of it.
I did not succeed in solving the mystery. But I traveled extensively around the United States, and I saw many of these things myself.
Well, I'm sorry the cat's wings fell off. That would have been very cool to have a winged cat.
Yeah. It was an interesting story, and it's in one of my books. Right now, offhand, I couldn't tell you which book, but anyway, I went to Point Pleasant expecting to stay there for a few hours.
Sure.
Interviewing these people.
Sure. And
I discovered that there were all sorts of things happening there. They were seeing UFOs. When I say UFOs, these were very, very bright lights.
Okay.
And they were going up and down the river, and everybody was seeing them. And nobody knew what they were. And very often they would be very, very low in the sky. They'd be like 100 feet above the water.
And in size, how big?
Well, they were mostly the size of a large beach ball. And extremely bright, and they would change colors sometimes. Just what we're hearing today, the same kind of thing.
Well, today, though, there's some recent, really interesting scientific literature about plasma balls. Now, these plasma balls apparently defy conventional physics in that they are able to maintain the energy that generates them and, in fact, even increase it while standing in the atmosphere. And
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I know, but I know that science has determined that, and they don't understand how it can be.
Well, they were talking about that in the 60s, the plasma balls.
Really?
And, you could say nothing is new, that everything that people are saying today, they were saying...
Has always been around?
Yes, and as you know, the history of this goes way back.
But actually being able to measure one, that is new. And being able to see it defy conventional physics, nothing after creation continues to get stronger. It gets weaker after the instant of creation, whatever would make this plasma ball. So it defies physics. That part's new.
Well, these things seem to have a basic intelligence to them. If you flash the flashlight at them, they jump out of the way of the beam.
I've heard those stories, yes.
And also, I would flash, say, 3 times, and they would flash back 3 times.
Oh.
And I did this in front of witnesses who signed affidavits to that. And I was totally baffled by this, because there were so many of them. And night after night, we would see them. And I was also, of course, I was hoping to catch the bird, as people called it.
Yes.
And
what did you think these, obviously you had to have done a lot of speculation about what these apparent intelligent balls of light were.
Well, they had to be some form of energy, because people who got close to them would suffer very severe burns on their body. Mm-hmm. Often the eyes would be the first to be affected. It was like conjunctivitis. And that happened to me once. It was like getting sand in your eyes, and it lasted for several days.
Oh, my.
And then there were 3 cases during that period, not in West Virginia but elsewhere, of people who were permanently blinded by looking at these things.
Do you believe that it was just the brightness of the object? You know, they tell you all the time, don't look at the sun. You could lose your sight. Or
right.
do you think it was some form of radiation or what?
Well, during that period, between 1964 and 1968, we had this enormous UFO wave all over the world. And a lot of people were suffering various kinds of physical ailments after seeing these things.
Right.
Some of them would, it was like their insides were burned or something. Their urine turned black.
As though they were cooked.
Cooked, right.
Maybe even microwaved, huh?
That would be microwaves, yes. And animals were very afraid of these things. Most dogs and cows and horses and things would act as terrified by them.
Well, they've got developed instincts.
They even probably heard sounds, too, that we couldn't hear.
Right. Right. They would instinctually, the way animals understand fire instinctually, they would understand this, I would think.
Yes.
Anything with that kind of energy, sure.
So,
We're not that bright, probably. We go, duh, what's that? Wow.
Well, when you consider the universe, we're sort of like ants. We can construct things and do things and destroy our environment, but I don't think we're very important in the universal scheme of things.
Or at least not as important as we think we are.
Yeah. Well, that's another problem. Man's ego is always getting in our way. These sightings, as I say, I saw so many of them and signaled to them, and other people were with me when I was seeing these things, and it was a very interesting period of history, which is now almost completely forgotten. Because there are new generations coming up who think it's new to them. And they see these things and think it's all brand new.
By the way, I want to settle something. My producers said they thought you were 80 years old.
I'm 72.
You're 72. So Lauren Coleman said you were 72, and he's exactly right then. You're 72. Yeah, I mean, America can barely remember what happened 2 weeks ago about a lot of things. And so remembering what happened that long ago, no way. But there's no doubt about it. You were there. It happened.
Yes, and I was in many other places. It was happening on Long Island here in New York State.
Really?
And many sightings. We could see them coming in from the ocean. It was like watching, these would look like the tips of red-hot pokers. And they would come in from the ocean and fly over Long Island. And these were larger objects in the light. We don't know what they were, but they were obviously radiating infrared or something. And over the years, I've seen a number of those. And they occasionally also have a habit of chasing automobiles.
Do you think there's a relationship between those and the lights we talked about?
I think they're all interrelated. How, I don't know. I sort of discarded the theory that they were from outer space because there's so many of them, and it goes back so far. The history goes back so far.
The one distinctive thing about Mothman seems to be the description of blood-red eyes, right?
Right. That's a description also of Bigfoot very often.
Yeah. You know how some people hate snakes and some people are scared of spiders?
Right.
I'm scared of things with red eyes. I don't like red eyes. And somebody earlier was saying, well, a lot of people have described things like Mothman as angels. And I said earlier, and I'll say again, angels definitely don't have red eyes. Not in my world, anyway. Hold on. Stay right exactly where you are, John. We'll take a break and be right back. I'm Art Bell.
I've been drifting on the sea of heartbreak, trying to get myself ashore for so long. For so long. Listening to the strangest stories, wondering where it all went wrong. For so long. For so long. But hold on to what you got.
You are on the air on the international line. Where are you calling from, please?
I'm from Scotland.
You are the first caller from Scotland. Where are you, please?
I'm in Madrid, Spain.
In Madrid, Spain, on the internet.
Everybody else would surely know who's watching her go.
Call Art Bell in the Kingdom of Nye from west of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach Art at 1-775-727-1222. And the wildcard line is open at 1-775-727-1295. To reach Art on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell from the Kingdom of Nye.
Like angels don't play this harp. Angels don't have red eyes. Anyway, we're going to talk more about the Mothman prophecies in a moment. That's a question in itself. Why? I wonder why they derive the word prophecies. That implies that something was told about something that would happen, something prophetic. John A. Keel will be right back.
Television. Nearly 1 century ago, an unspeakable evil was born.
Some houses are born bad. Houses like Rose Red.
Now one team's dream to uncover the truth
Rose Red is a dangerous place to run psychic experiments.
will become their worst nightmare. Stephen King's Rose Red. The terror begins Sunday at 9, 8 Central on ABC.
Well, it certainly cannot be a coincidence, because I don't believe in coincidences like this, that John Keel is on the program tonight, and the movie just happens to be being released today. It's not a coincidence.
Isn't that astounding?
Right? Yeah, astounding. Now, they've probably been running you around doing interviews all over the place, haven't they?
Yes, they have.
Sucking your blood dry, right? Right up until the release date.
I've been interviewed by newspapers from all over the country and done a number of TV shows.
Newspapers are not as much fun. They somehow they always get stuff wrong.
That's guaranteed.
I mean, it absolutely is guaranteed. At least when you're on radio, these are your words. You know, they're not going to change.
Right.
The Mothman prophecies. Why the word prophecies?
Because I started, when I was chasing these things, I started getting a lot of mysterious phone calls.
Oh.
And this was, today we have satellites up there that can interfere with any telephone on Earth.
Right.
And in those days we didn't have those satellites, so I couldn't really blame the government for this. These phone calls were usually very mechanical voices, like you get today from a computer, but we didn't have real PCs in those days either.
Right.
And they predicted a number of things that came true right on the nose.
Like what?
Martin Luther King.
His assassination?
Yes, they told me that he would be shot in the throat. And I took it so seriously, I spent desperate days trying to contact this group. And I failed. Later I learned that many other people had also gotten this prediction one way or another and had tried to contact him. I think that, as you know, his last speech was, "I've been to the mountaintop." And it was almost a farewell speech.
Right.
He must have been aware of all this. There were predictions that the Pope was going to be assassinated. And there was an incident where a man dressed as a priest attacked the Pope with a black knife. Unfortunately, Pope's guards subdued this man, but it was a real attempt. There were a lot of predictions which some of my books outlined in full.
Was this coming, John, at Point Pleasant, or following Point Pleasant, or what?
This would usually be when I was back in my New York apartment, when I'd get these crazy phone calls.
Do you think that it had something to do with Point Pleasant?
It was all interconnected because I was going back and forth to Point Pleasant frequently. And now that's almost 1,000 miles from New York. But as soon as I would get back from Point Pleasant, I'd have a string of messages, frantic things were happening again in Point Pleasant. So I'd have to jump in my car and go back. Mm-hmm. And one of the predictions that sort of built up over a period of time was that there was going to be a terrible accident on the river, the Ohio River, and that a lot of people were going to be killed. And because the other predictions had come true, I was getting rather frantic about this because I didn't know precisely what was going to happen. There were chemical factories along the river, and I was afraid that one of them was going to blow up. And of course, I couldn't tell the people there. If it didn't happen, I'd look like a fool, and if it did happen, it's even worse.
You'd be implicated or something.
Well, I would have started a lot of rumors. That's what would have happened. And
now, if you successfully predicted a chemical plant blowing up, believe me, you'd be a suspect.
Oh yeah, because the FBI and the CIA were around there at that time. I found out later a lot more than I should have known. The TNT area.
Oh, no, that's interesting. So in other words, our own government, our spook side government, knew something was going on there as well and wanted to know what it was?
Because there were suddenly a lot of strangers, and as you know, especially in the 60s, the FBI dressed almost in a uniform. They had very short hair. They always wore a hat, and they dressed with neckties and things that you didn't see in Point Pleasant very often. And
so an FBI agent would tend to stick out like a sore thumb.
Right. Well, that was their problem all over the country. Now I think they grow beards and they dress shabby clothes and so on. But in those days, they had to follow that dress code.
Well, I'll tell you something, John. The FBI guys that I've seen still look FBI all the way. I've had a few visit, and they're really classic guys.
Yeah, it's almost like a machine turns them out somewhere.
Yeah, I guess, well, it does sort of. I guess that, as you point out, though, they've got a lot of undercover people and so forth now these days. But, yeah, you're right. In those days, they would have just about all looked that way. And so, they'd be recognizable in Point Pleasant. So you think our government had a big interest in whatever was happening there?
Well, there was a lady who lived near the bridge, and she claimed that she saw 2 days before the disaster, she saw two men wearing low-cut shoes, Oxfords, well-shined, and plaid jackets, climbing around the bridge. Now, she never seen anybody except workmen climbing on that bridge. And these guys, she couldn't identify them, but they weren't wearing FBI black jackets.
Right. So the obvious suspicion is they did something that might have weakened the bridge, or I don't know, in some way affected it.
You could really speculate on that, and it didn't make any sense to her at the time. Especially, and this is an area where men wore boots all the time. And, it was wintertime, and a lot of slush and snow. It was not proper dress to be climbing around a bridge.
Right. What would be, if you were to speculate, what would be the motive for doing that? Why bring the bridge down? What do you affect when you do that? What's the idea?
Well, there's another thing that happened when the bridge fell. There was a stoplight at either end of the bridge, and they were stuck on red. So the traffic on the bridge was not moving. It was cluttered with traffic. And these stoplights were not working.
So in other words, the entire bridge was covered with traffic?
Yeah, well, Christmas traffic. It was December 15th.
Right. And
it was the rush hour. And in those days, they had a rush hour. I don't think they have one anymore. But there were a lot of things that just didn't make sense. This kind of bridge normally wouldn't fall into the water. It was
right.
So that was just one part of the whole story.
Were many killed?
Yes, about 47 people.
47 people.
It made headlines all over the world.
Why do you think? Well, of course, I guess it was prophesized. So.
Well, they didn't say the bridge was going to collapse.
But a tragedy.
Every time I went to Point Pleasant, I carried a gas mask with me.
Why?
Well, I was thinking of chemical factories.
Oh, I see.
And of course, I didn't want to start any kind of rumors or panics or anything, so I kept my mouth shut, except I wrote to a few people. At that time I was corresponding with Dr. Jacques Vallée.
Oh, yes, of course.
And he mentions it in one of his books, that I had sent him a letter predicting that something was going to happen on the river, the Ohio River. And he probably thought I was nuts.
So, Mothman, then, might have been, by imparting prophecies with his presence, or its presence, whatever it was or is, It might have been trying to warn people that danger, disaster, something horrible was about to happen?
Yes. And people in Point Pleasant started having very strange dreams. Mary Heyer, who was a newspaper reporter, dreamt that there were Christmas packages floating on the river. And the dream really disturbed her. But she couldn't interpret it. And other people were getting the same kind of dreams, that something terrible was going to happen in the town. And I was caught in the middle of all of this. And there was nothing I could do, really.
John, wouldn't there be another way of looking at it, though? That was a half-full glass of water. The half-empty is that Mothman caused this.
Well, he either caused it or he was trying to convey information to us in a strange way. And, I've given a lot of thought over the years. My book covers that whole period in detail because I kept careful notes, and I knew that there was something bizarre going on, and I didn't know what it was.
God, John, I've got to tell you about something. Earlier tonight, and I'm going to have Keith put this up for me on my website as soon as we can do it. There was a picture of a street just about where the 9/11 disaster occurred. Somebody who took a photograph, John. Maybe you've even seen it. Maybe somebody sent it to you. I don't know. Of this bird just having passed, it looks like a building. And it looks like a gigantic pterodactyl. It's the daggonest picture I've ever seen, John. Have you seen?
I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen that? No. Do you have a computer?
I have, but my electronics are not working very well here.
Okay. Well, Keith, if you have that photo and you can get it up, would you please put it up? I've been puzzling about this since I saw this photograph.
This was before the buildings went down?
Actually, it was just after. You can see the dust rising and stuff. And here's this giant... people have said, well, the bird is closer to the camera than you think, but it doesn't look that way to me. It looks like a prehistoric, gigantic bird, and I think it's a real photograph, and I wish I had a computer so I could let you look at it. But it's got a prehistoric look to it. There's absolutely no question about it in my mind. And I wonder, I wonder.
Well, we all wonder. Is there anything close to it that you can compare the sizes with? Or?
Well, let's put it this way. If this creature is where it looks to be with respect to the building, it would have to be like 100 feet long. Or it's hard to even estimate. I don't know. It's what a true prehistoric bird looks like. Birds are still kind of prehistoric. The ones we have out here in the desert, when you look at them, they look prehistoric, John.
Yeah.
Birds are very old. They're the relatives to the dinosaurs.
Right. Well, that's very strange. In 1975, a group of school teachers were driving in Texas, and they saw what they thought was pterodactyl. They really thought it was a pterodactyl.
Right.
And this was investigated by Jerry Clark. I think you probably know him. There are no pterodactyls in Texas as far as we know.
I know there are people out investigating, actually going out into the field looking for pterodactyls now.
Are they?
Yes, there are. There are safaris down to South America and Central America looking for these things. So a lot of people believe they're still around, and they might be.
Well, if they were, they would have to eat a lot, and we would find evidence of that. Of course, we do have the animal mutilations that have been going on for years, and
a lot of them going on right now in Montana, right now.
I think Linda is probably there.
Linda probably is there, and I know that other investigatory agencies that come on this program are also there. There's a lot of people investigating this right now, and I have no answer for them. Do you?
Well, some years ago, a group of farmers in the western states held a class action suit against the government, claiming the government was doing this. And I think they won the case.
They won the case?
There was a book published of the transcript of the trial and everything. It's called Atomic Holocaust. I can't remember the name of the author. He was a reputable newspaper man.
Really?
And this, you barely heard about this in the news media. But I did accidentally find a copy of the book, which I have buried here somewhere with my other books. But I remember reading it carefully. And they claimed, the radiation collects around the anus of the animals.
Uh-huh.
And they found that in a lot of these animals. And they apparently had a real case against the government.
The only problem I ever had with that was, our government wouldn't have a hard time getting their hands on cows if they needed them.
Yeah, they should have their own ranch.
At the very least, right? So why would they need various poor farmers' cattle? That part just never made sense to me.
Maybe it was some kind of an accident, and these animals were involved in it. I don't know if you remember that far back. There was a case where a lot of sheep were killed.
I do remember.
Oh, boy.
Yes, uh-huh.
That was a government mistake.
It was, yes, it certainly was. And so, yes, if it happens once, I guess it can happen twice or three times. Yep, you're absolutely right.
We have enough trouble with all these other things without chasing the government, chasing animals. Everything is so weird and so interconnected in all this.
Well, a lot of people have speculated that they need animals that have been exposed in certain areas, in specific areas. They have to take samples or something in certain areas. A lot of people think it may be speculative, might be environmentally, some sort of environmental test that's going on because changes show up very quickly in cows, I guess.
Well, why wouldn't they come out in the open and go to the farmer and say, listen, we got a problem, I'm going to look at your animals?
Well,
why do it in the middle of the night?
Well, because people like John Keel would write big stories about it.
Well, that's true.
and then we would find out we had a big environmental problem they didn't really apparently want to discuss. So they might not go up to the farmer and say all that.
We know we have a big environmental problem on all levels, water and air and.
Well, we sort of know it. A lot, but not enough of the right people know it. Tonight, in the first hour, John, I was showing a picture of the Antarctic, where there ought to be ice. There's water.
Yes, it's melting. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And that's pretty scary.
Oh.
As you know, what will happen if the ice caps melt?
Nothing good.
And then we have the problem of the superstorms and all that. The weather is really undergoing a strange change.
You've noticed.
Yeah, everybody has noticed. You have a book out on it, right?
Okay, you know about that.
I've read it.
John, you read it. John, hold on. Stay right there. I'm Art Bell. And this is Coast to Coast AM. Good morning.
There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. There's battle lines being drawn, and nobody's right if everybody's wrong.
You've known Dan Aykroyd since Saturday Night Live, the Blues Brothers, and the House of Blues, but did you know he's got a deep interest in UFOs? You can